Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Citystreetsme.com. We are here in the beautiful city of Wichita, Kansas at one of the greatest universities ever here, live at Friends University. We're here with Mr. Riccardo Harris. Mr. Riccardo Harris, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm not doing too bad. I'm not doing too bad. It's raining. My grass is getting wet, so I'm happy. I'm happy. For the people in Wichita that don't know about you, give them a little background on who you are.
My name is Riccardo Harris. I born and raised in Wichita. I'm a local pastor. Been a pastor for 17 years in this area. Have 3 kids. Been married for 20 years. So that's it in a nutshell.
Right on, right on. Right into it. Tell me about the book. I seen some things on the Facebook scroll about the book. I read the book, or I read the excerpts of the book. I haven't read the book, but I read the excerpts on the book. Talk to me about the book. How did we get there? Where we are? What's behind the book?
Okay. About 5 years ago, January 5th, 2008, my 19-year-old son was killed in a drive-by shooting. Some people say, okay, he's at the wrong place, wrong time. But he had picked up some kids from a basketball game and was dropping them off home. And he stopped his car. He was right by Wesley Hospital. And he had some other friends that were trailing him in a car.
Right.
And so he pulled aside, waiting for them to catch up. Meanwhile, a car pulls up next to him with several occupants in the car. They ask him a question, and the driver reaches over and he starts just firing. He fired 4 times at him, shot 4 times. One bullet hit him in the elbow, and the other bullet hit him in the carotid artery on the left side. And that bullet traveled to the carotid artery on the right side. He tried to drive himself to the hospital, knowing that the hospital was just like right around the corner.
Right.
And he got his car stuck on the curb, gets out of the car, and his last words were, "Take me to the hospital." They get him to the hospital, his friends, and he dies a short time later. You talk about something that just rocks a family, man. That just, my son wasn't in the gang. He didn't hang out with gang members. We growing up, he didn't even have water guns around the house because I didn't believe in perpetuating that or showing that it's okay to even shoot somebody just playing around. So we, it rocked us. It changed us. It really did. So I was determined. I'll say that. I was very determined not to allow that situation, not to allow his death to be in vain.
Right.
So immediately after that, so this is January, March of that year, March 2008, I started speaking at schools, high schools, middle schools, wherever they would have me.
Right.
Gang workshops, conferences, talking about violence and talking about how gang violence affects people. And I established, the speeches were going well, very, very well. I was traveling a little bit, and I reached a point where I couldn't tell everything in my speeches.
Right.
And so I said, well, you know what? I need a book. I need to write a book to tell the story in more detail. I need a book to tell the story. And then also to tell what I didn't say.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? In my speeches. And so starting last January, I started working on this book. And I wrote, and it was healing. You're talking about stuff just coming out. I'm writing and I'm writing and I'm writing. After a little while, I hit a writer's block. I couldn't write anything for 5 months, man. Nothing. No matter how many times I sat down at my computer, iPad, I couldn't do anything. So I reached that place, but it was unfinished. I had probably written 50 pages at that time. But I knew it wasn't finished. And so a couple of months ago, the writing came back. The writer's block left, and I was able to finish the book and ultimately publish it. And now it's available worldwide. So
Now here we are. We're never formal around here. I want you to slide over this way to make sure that we get all this. I want you to slide because this is. Come on and slide. Yeah, over here. Yeah, we're not formal.
I got it.
With that. Let me ask you this.
Okay.
When I seen it come down, everything happens for a reason. So I seen the scroll come down on Facebook, and I just happened to because I just recently lost my son back in September.
I'm sorry to hear that.
And so I seen that, and I seen the book, and I was like, well, you know, and then I clicked on it, and I was like, you know, for a couple months, everybody's saying that, you know, they can relate to what you've been through, but nobody really can relate to, because I guess it's that old cliche, is that no parent should ever have to bury their child. And so being able to see somebody that has went through that, it's empowering and to a point. And so I want to ask you, where did you generate the strength after that happened to pick yourself up and pick your family up and carry on?
I talk a lot about that in the book, and let me say that I went into a different mode. I found strength that I didn't even know I had immediately, and I'm gonna go back to that scene in the hospital. And I remember the doctor coming out. We waited 4 hours, man. We're in the hospital waiting, not hearing anything. We know he was shot. That's all we knew.
Right.
Didn't know if he was alive, dead or alive. And so after about 4 hours waiting in the waiting room, 3 or 4, the doctor and the whole team comes out. The doctor says all this stuff. Hey, you know, he tells where he was shot and everything. So we couldn't save him. I felt like the wind was knocked out of me. Here I am, and you said it, that cliche. You just said those words, and those words were, no parent should ever have to bury a child. Wow. And immediately pops in my mind is, how am I going to bury my son? That's what popped in my mind. How am I going to bury my son? And how am I going to hold this together? My wife, my 2 daughters, my family. How am I going to do this? And so I went into a mode where I'm taking care of everything. On the outside, it looks like I got it going on. It looks like, okay, I kicked in the gear. I made sure I began to plan the funeral. Me and my wife sitting down and making sure we're trying to make sure that we're getting everything set for the funeral. I write the obituary. I make the obituary. I did it all. I got busy.
Right.
I got very, very, very busy. And then making sure everybody was okay. Everybody's good. Okay. All right. All right. All right. And so it put me in a mode where I was just taking care of business. I was busy. I also talk about in the book that 2 years passes. And around the anniversary of his death, I cracked. I lose it, man. I can remember screaming at the top of my lungs, man, just screaming. Because I was so mad and I was angry, and I had to be honest with myself that I was angry. I had hidden this because I was taking care of everybody else, but I was angry. I was mad at God. And the reason I was mad at God, because here I am. I'm a preacher. I'm a pastor. I take care of people. I make sure I do this. This is what I do. I don't do it I'm not trying to be rich. That's not the point. I do it because it's a mission. It's what God has called me to do.
Right.
And so I felt like God had let me down. How could He allow something so horrible to happen to me? So in the midst of me taking care of everybody else, I had this messed up heart, man. I was messed up. So my foundation was messed up. And that was that relationship with God. And I had to fix that. And I had to come to terms with some things. Him and I, we had some great conversations where,
right.
You know what I'm saying? Where we were just hashing things out. And one of the biggest things that I talk about, like, God, how can you take, that's my only son. How can you take my only son? He said, I had a son once too.
Right on. Right on. Hey, I understand. I understand where you're coming from, because it's one of those things that as we went through our ordeal, it's one of those. I can't get upset with God over the millions of times that He's blessed me, and then there's one incident that didn't go in my favor, right. and I used to sit back and I'd look at people and they go through things, and they would get angry and they get mad at God, and I'd say, for all the blessings that we've received, how could you do that? Yeah. Well, it's an interesting question when you're on the other side of that.
Yes.
So let me ask you this:
okay.
Your faith,
mm-hmm.
How big of a part did that play in getting you through what you got?
That's
through?
Exactly what got me through it, man. I'm to be honest, man. That's what did it. You think about the poem the lady wrote, Carolyn Carty, Footprints. When you talk about man is looking back over his life and he's seeing all these different things, and he's seeing 2 sets of footprints the whole time. And at some point in time, there's just one set of footprints, and the man immediately begins to say, God, where were you during this time? I see a point in my life, and I know that was my most difficult time I've ever had in my life, and you were not there. God reminds the man, it was in those moments, that one set of footprints that you see were mine. I was carrying you. And God truly does carry us during those times. God was there. God, and you hear the old people say, different people in church say, God never put more on you than you can bear. We don't know what we can bear.
Right.
We don't know our limit because we haven't been tested to that point. This situation tested me to the point where you talk about, I'd say it in the book, it rocked my faith. It really did, to the point where I was like, oh. But I'm going to tell you now, the resolve I have now, the faith that I have now, it's greater than it's ever been. And the reason it's greater than it's ever been is because I've been up, I've been down, and God has been constant.
I like that. I like that. Before we get you out of here, I want to ask you this, and divert if you may.
Okay.
If you where is the family at today? How are you guys spiritually, mentally? You said, how long are we talking about here? We're talking about
Almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years in January.
Where are you guys at today?
We're doing well. We are, and that's the thing about grief. Everybody heals differently.
Right.
Different people go through that, and I noticed that with my family. Again, I keep referring back to the book, but in the book I talk about my wife and seeing that hurt and that pain in her eyes. Something left her when that happened. That's her only son. That's her boy. And I saw some type of life leave her eyes. And I can honestly say, to this day, at this point, life has come back. And it's exciting to see that life has come back. I have 2 daughters, and to see the emptiness that was in them. But to have I had that emptiness go away. To have it feel, they're making it. They miss their brother. My wife misses her son. I miss my son. But we're together, and we are fighting through it. I have 2 new grandchildren. Both of my daughters just had a baby.
Congratulations.
Thank you. 2 boys. Double for your trouble.
Right. I like that.
2 boys. Jaden was born July 3rd, and Xavier was born August 29th. So they were right there together. Bam,
right.
Bam. And seeing the life there, I was just so excited just to be able to celebrate some life. Our family experienced so much death over the last 7, 8 years, one after another, and all that loss and all that taken away. But now here's life coming in.
Right on.
So
let me ask you this. You're a pastor,
yeah,
and you've got children.
Yeah.
You've experienced some loss. You've seen the current state of some of our younger generation coming up. If you could convey one message to the younger ones coming up that are seems to be getting a little bit wilder. I'm not picking on the next generation. I'm just saying, y'all. That's the way it looks. They seem to be getting a little bit wilder, maybe a little bit off track. What would be the message that you would put out there to them to get their attention, to get them back on the right track?
I think learning from lessons of loss. I mean, and this example, when I talk to young people all over the country, I tell you, it is amazing to see the hardest of the hardest gang members, the ones that can't nobody get to, when they hear the story, seeing a tear come to their eyes.
Right.
But what I talk about is character, man. Character is, that's all you have. You have your character. You have your integrity. You have your how you carry yourself, how you deal with other people. And so that message, of that character message, I challenge young people. I challenge them to be respectful. Okay, what is respect? The young man that shot my son felt like he looked at him the wrong way. So he felt like he was disrespected. So he was justified in doing that. So that's why I started with respect.
Right.
Respect, and it's based upon, respect is your own perspective of it. Right. It's your perception of what respect is. Somebody can bump into you and you swear up and down it's on purpose, but it was an accident.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So things can get out of hand there. But I talk about respect, I talk about responsibility. When you do wrong, accept responsibility. If it was you, if you did it, say I did it.
Right.
Because you grow up more when you accept responsibility.